Fantastic. Brethren all, thank you so much for joining us for another one of our annual Grandmasters exit interviews. I want to give a little short history of exactly what this is here. So we were tasked a few years ago with recording past Grandmaster interviews for the historical record. And in doing so, we realized if we don't start capturing those in real time, we are just never going to get ahead of the ball on this thing. So we started doing exit interviews of our past Grandmasters. And essentially, we kind of get two birds with one stone with that. So we'll start out and we want to work through and get the historical record of our Grandmaster's journey through Masonry. So we're going to kind of walk through his Masonic history and ultimately end up during his term as Grandmaster of the jurisdiction of Kansas. All of you have the opportunity prior to this. We have some, and also in the chat for this session. Any questions that you might want to ask the Grandmaster, please put those in the chat and we will work those in. But this is a fantastic opportunity to add a bit of history that we've never had before. Because if we go back to our Grandmasters and generations past, like Reese, like Graybill, all these guys, we have a lot of excellent writing from them, but we don't have that personality from them. We don't have the history that they went through in their own words. We don't have those guys that influenced them, their mentors, those memories through the degrees and just their Masonic experience. We don't have it coming from their own voice, their own facial expressions, and all that mixed in. So this is a great way to utilize the technology of today to capture today as the history of tomorrow. So I really, really appreciate all of you being here for that. And with that, I want to introduce you to Most Worshipful Rob McClarty, Grandmaster of the Grand Lodge of Kansas. Most Worshipful, thank you so much for being with us here today.
Thank you for the invite. Thank you for the opportunity to talk. Thank you for the opportunity to interact with everybody that's online. What a great night.
Think we got us spotlighted there. All right. So Most Worshipful, as we start this off, I want to get an understanding first and foremost, why are you a Mason in the first place? What is it that brought Masonry in front of you? And then once you got in, what kept you around?
So the initial draw was to be with like-minded men. I was in a leadership position, chief of police at the time, and I felt a calling to be more with like-minded men away from my career, away from my job. But I had a really unique opportunity. My captain at the time ultimately became my deputy chief or assistant chief, and one of my lieutenants, one of my captains, another one of my sergeants, a couple of my officers were all Masons. And I started noticing that they carried themselves different. They treated people different. So I started asking questions, and one of the sheriff's deputies, Joe Hoffman at the time, also caught my attention, and I started building a lot of comfort being around Masons, and that ultimately I asked, I said, so what's the guy got to do? And oddly, they had a petition in my hand in less than 2 minutes, and I soon thereafter became a member of Lindsborg Lodge, and I actually went to my captain's installation as a worshipful master. He was being installed to sit in the east, actually right before I was brought in and raised. And so I actually was raised by one of my captains, and was escorted around the room by Brother Hoffman, and they became my initial mentors inside the lodge. Soon thereafter, I started interacting with several other like-minded brothers that were also law enforcement and or military. that I felt were like-minded. I know that some of this is going to shock you, but most worshipful Kellerman, most worshipful Presley, uh, Rick Reichert, um, just an incredible Mason. And so I started finding myself wanting to be around more and more like-minded men. And that's how it started.
That's fantastic. And, you know, you name some really heavy hitters there. And I think that's a powerful testament to speak to the journey that you came through with those men alongside you. Some really, really great names there. So I'm curious within Lodge, how fast was it until you took on a leadership role within your lodge and entered the lodge line, if you will?
About 2 weeks. Um, no, I didn't get thrown to the wolves too hard, too fast. I actually began sitting in a um, senior steward's chair within probably 2 months, 3 months, because our steward left. Um, from there, the following year, I moved into the junior deacon seat, and from there to I believe it was the junior warden, then the senior warden, and simultaneously, it was a unique experience. Simultaneously, I was trying to, as senior warden, I was trying to support McPherson Lodge, who was seriously struggling at the time, seriously struggling. And I was challenged by a district deputy who was sitting in the room at the night. He said, "Why don't you put your money where your mouth is and become a member here as well, and maybe take a leadership position here?" And so I did. I was actually uh, senior warden at the time, had just moved into the senior warden position, and became a member in. Actually, I was still a junior warden. Was a junior warden and took a membership with plural membership with McPherson Lodge, so Lindsborg Lodge and McPherson Lodge, and literally, I don't know, 5 months later, 6 months later, I became the master in McPherson, and took on the challenge of revitalizing McPherson Lodge, and I think did a pretty good job. We went from ready to close the doors and consolidate with another lodge, probably was going to be Lindsborg, to having 10, 15, 20 brothers, 25 brothers in lodge, Masonic Light every time. And I'm a huge proponent of Masonic Light, as most people would tell you. I believe that we flipped a switch and we put people in the right place, that they've taken it far beyond what I did. Patrick Carr and Kelly Long and numerous brothers there, enhanced, embraced Masonic culture and the way it should be. And we'll probably talk more about that later, but showing an ideal Masonic experience for brothers. And that's what I tried to do. And I was green. I was really, really green at the time, but I had lots of people trying to help me, and I pulled from lots of people trying to help us. And they, if you surround yourself with really good people and like-minded men, and then you pull on some of I think you call them power players or power hitters a little bit ago, and they come in and they share Masonic Light, and they help you, they mentor you, and then you start hosting outside events like Justice Lodge and other things in your own lodge. It continues to draw. We started hosting in McPherson. I had a opportunity to host a annual shoot on our firearms range that the McPherson Police Department partnered with Justice Lodge, and we utilized McPherson Lodge for the first couple of years of that to hold a meeting in either the night before or the night of the shoot. And so again, it was bringing a draw and bringing people to the lodge, bringing people to the community, and absolutely love McPherson Linsborg and the work there. Soon thereafter, the next year I left the east in McPherson and took the east in Linsborg.
Wow.
So McPherson master first and then Linsborg master there to follow. And during that same time frame, I became, as I've already mentioned, I was a member of Linsborg or of Justice Lodge, the three lodges that I'm still an active member in and promote all three of them actively. So
That's quite the journey. So you go through officer line in your home lodge, you end up serving as worshipful master, and then as soon as you see the light of the door where most people get kicked outside of that door, you take the east all over again in a whole nother lodge. That's quite a bit to take on there. From that point, did you go on to serve as a district deputy or anything of that nature before you progressed into a grand office?
so I was actually uh, most worshipful buyer moved me as a district deputy while I was still in the east and asked me to fill the role of district deputy, and I did, and I think made a lot of really good things happen in that respect as well. Simultaneously, while district deputy, I took on leadership roles in the Scottish Rite and in the York Rite, and began moving my way through those lines as well. Um, my wife is extremely supportive. We've been married 37 years, have a couple adult kids, and several granddaughters now. And my wife is extremely supportive and very, um, yeah, she's just my rock all the way around. So,
You know, that's a fascinating point, and I think we need to touch on that. There's really 2 points here. So you mentioned one being heavily involved in appendant bodies. First off, let's ask how quickly into your journey did you get involved in appendant bodies?
so I would say within 2 years, I was a member of the Scottish Rite. Within another year, I became a member of the York Rite, and another year a member of the Shrine, and heavily became active in the Scottish Rite. Have filled out of the Valley of Salina, have filled every leadership position there is there.
Wow.
The Salina York Rite bodies filled all the leadership positions there, and tried to leave all those better than I found them. I was one of the um, founders of redeveloping, reactivating the Knights of St. Andrew and in Salina, and great support, absolutely great support from well, just several brothers there, but John Reynolds actually just kind of shoved me, let me run. Um, yeah, just huge support throughout the entire Salina area, north to south, throughout the center of the state as well, and out into western Kansas. Even when I was initiated into the Shrine, there were, I don't know, they did it short form, but there were probably, I don't know, 30 brothers there, maybe more. So huge support, and I will never forget that. So.
Fantastic. So here's my heavy question. Before we get to that, I want to make sure everyone knows because we're getting a ton of questions coming in, and I love it. This is more questions than we've had. So we are going to work through all of your questions. Please know that we're going to get up through most worshipful working through the grand line, and then we will start working through those as his term in office. So those questions will probably be a little out of order as we ask them, but we will work through everything that you guys have submitted. Now, most worshipful, you gave some high praise to your wife here a minute ago, and we've talked about just how busy you've been in Freemasonry, how beneficial that has been to you. I have to ask, how important is it? As you stressed, she's been so supportive of you through this journey. How important is that? As so many Masons get busy in masonry, to have such a supportive role, and how to go through that.
Priceless. Yeah, it's priceless. I would have never have been able to accomplish or grow myself, develop further myself as a not only as a Mason, but not only as a leader in my community, the positions that I've held, the board positions that I've held, um, but the leader in my home, the leader in my church, the person that I am today. I would have never became that or become that without her unwavering support. It's so priceless. You asked how important it is. I think it's, yeah, you can't put a value on it. There's nothing that'll touch it.
Couldn't say it better myself, most worshipful. And yeah, 100%. I think we all have to give praise to all the Masonic wives out there, but more especially knowing that Mrs. Grandmaster has obviously gone through quite a bit to take on that role. Leaves a lot of responsibility and a lot of weight on the shoulders of the entire family that has to go through that. So we're very thankful for her understanding and support as well.
Yeah.
Now we've kind of talked about you going through Blue Lodge, you going through and serving in Grand Lodge roles, district deputy and so forth. At what point do you hit the Grand Line of Kansas?
So I served 1 year as district deputy, 2 years as an area deputy through the center of the state. And I was then appointed by Most Watchful Morrow to the Grand Senior Deacon position. And then was subsequently elected. So it's been a fast-paced journey. As I will tell you that as I took the Grand East, I was actually still the Grand Commander of Knights Templar in Kansas after working my way through that line, and filled subsequent dual roles through that for until May. So for a couple of additional months, March through May.
Now, as you worked through that process and you geared towards the position of the Grand East, Kansas operates a little differently than some other jurisdictions out there, where it's just kind of a Grandmaster's plan and then a new Grandmaster's plan. We have this strategic plan in place in our jurisdiction. In your opinion, did that work in your favor or against, or how would you speak upon that strategic plan that we have in place here?
So, as you're well aware, Kansas is seen as a leader in masonry because of that foundation, because of that formation. So the excuse me, as Grandmaster is appoints his appointee as Grand Senior Deacon. I will tell you that that position is well vetted by not only the Grand Master, but by the Council of Administration, and has been for quite some time. It is a vetted position to assure that a Grand Master does not come in with the idea of this is my year, that we actually follow a plan. It's always changing, it's always evolving, it's always moving forward, but it's always building upon the foundation that we have in place. And we have, I believe, the best process in masonry, period, because the Grand Senior Deacon is able to be not only vetted, but then is trained, is mentored, is they get an idea of all the moving parts of the Grand Lodge of Kansas, starting with the committees and helping oversight the committees, to helping with the strategic plan, to making sure that the strategic plan's being followed. And that continues with different pieces and different pieces of the puzzle through the junior warden position, the senior warden position, and the heavy impact of the deputy grand master. So when when one of us arrives in the Grand East, we continue that process through retreats and council of administration meetings and Zoom meetings and phone calls, and it's constant leadership development, but it's to assure that we don't go off the rails and that we're always doing what's in the best interest of Kansas Masonry. You're going to hear me say that in my Grandmaster's report in the advanced proceedings. You're going to hear me say that in the open session and in the tiled session at the annual communication. The Council of Administration are the finest guys that I've ever been around. And I truly, we would have never accomplished everything we've accomplished if we didn't have the foundation and the formation that Kansas Masonry uses. I look at some of the turmoil that we've seen in other jurisdictions because they don't have that. And I could go on that for an hour long, so I'll stop there. But yeah, no, some of the greatest guys, some of the greatest, the leaders before me that I sat in COA meetings with, and their ideals and their, you know, from all of them, you know, you can just work your way back, and Borum and Morrow and Johnson and Stoops and all of them, you know, Talbot, and we can just keep going here. It's that foundation, and you can still see the ones that are active today and are still feeding Masonry today, trying to do what's in the best interest of Kansas Masonry. So
You nailed it on the head there. And, you know, it just makes me think, because while, you know, Masonry is not a business at the Grand Lodge level, to be able to, you know, progress and keep this thing moving in an administrative way, it kind of has to be operated as a business, right? And if we just go from one person to another, which is possible, we see it in other jurisdictions, you just don't make quite the progress that you could without having that joint vision in place, that goal, and, you know, like-minded progress in that nature. And I agree with you. I think we have greatly benefited from having that in place in Kansas. And hearing you speak about that makes me think of something that I've heard a lot from you, especially as you came up through Grand Line, and that's a term, servant leadership. And kind of that strategic plan really puts it into place, that it's, you know, it's not just what I want, but there's a grand plan here that we're all playing to be a part of. Since that has been a huge thing that we've heard from you, I kind of want to get your take on that. What is servant leadership, and how has it played into your Masonic journey, and more especially your Masonic leadership?
well, as far as how it's played in or how it's played out, I guess you probably should ask the next several grandmasters that. But I, you know, I've preached servant leadership in um, numerous leadership academies, years back to uh, as recent as the area and district deputy orientation this year, and I preach it every opportunity I get. So servant leadership is just that. It puts others first, and it's somebody that's not afraid to get their hands dirty and do some work, and that focuses on the betterment of everyone, everything, everyone else, and is willing to give for that. And you know, you have to have a good EQ. You have to have an ability to understand what other people's needs are. But I think my career has in law enforcement of now 37 years, 37 years in law enforcement. And I teach servant leadership mentality and mentorship in the law enforcement realm today. I teach it in lodges. I promote it within the Council of Administration. And I think most people would tell you, if they understand what servant leadership is, that I portray that. I live that. I act that. And I think that's the only way, by putting the best interest of everything into place. And so I thank you for asking that, and actually for recognizing that. But yeah, servant leadership is huge, and I think, you know, it builds on not only my faith but on the foundation of masonry. That's what all of us do, is try to take care of other people, try to take care of each other, try to take care of, and that's servant leadership, whether you realize it or not. That's a big piece of it. So yes, I do. I strongly believe in servant leadership, and would encourage anyone to build a foundation of servant leadership, and then walk the walk. Don't just talk it.
Fantastic. Now, we do have a ton of questions here. We're going to work through the most important point here. You working into the hefty role as Grandmaster of Kansas. Before you hit Grandmaster of Kansas, we have a different position, right? You have this deputy Grandmaster. Explain a little bit, when you hit deputy Grandmaster, did it get any realer for you at that point? That, you know, that hot seat's coming. What was going through your mind in your term as deputy Grandmaster as you're heading towards the Grand East?
Yeah, there's a pretty powerful uh, thing that happens when you kneel and you take the oath of a Grand Master. Yeah, you're going to serve 1 year as the deputy, but it is that's when it hits you and you go, this is real. This is this is a big deal. And the weight of recognizing what can happen in to an organization, if you don't have that foundation, if you don't follow the beliefs of masonry, if you don't focus on our strategic plan, and if you don't focus on our landmarks and our bylaws and our the understanding of the business itself of masonry. So there's a whole bunch of it tied into one that, yeah, it gets really real. Yeah, it gets really real.
So as you're entering in to your year as Grandmaster, I'm curious, what at that point did you see as some of the main objectives that needed to be carried out from that time?
Hmm. Main objectives. Well, it was
Well,
to go ahead.
like task driven, like as you come in saying, okay, we've got things that need to be done. This is what's on our plate.
Okay, so I actually had a couple of those. So it was to continue the strategic plan. That was number one, and to continue to develop the ritualistic, figuring out how we can better impact Kansas Masons. And there was some shuffling, some moving around, some tweaking of some of the leadership in RITCOM and Grand Lectures, and ways that we could bring in some new ideas, and to bring in some um, additional people, not not anything out of the realm, but additional people that could help with that, to enact things like the district lectures, the ritualistic competition, I mean, we could go on and on, but so those are a couple of examples in that lane, to focus on better communication, whether that's written, whether it's in social media, whether it's through our website, whether it's through podcasts, through attendance, however, whatever we're going to do to improve communication as well. And I think we've done that in several different aspects this year. And I've just mentioned a few of those. Also to continue our membership lane. So something really unique that I'll talk about just briefly. Um, when I was appointed as Grand Senior Deacon, there was hot conversation in Kansas Masonry that we were going to be below 100 lodges and have somewhere around 8,000 Masons at the time, that I would become Grand Master. and that trend would continue far beyond that, and that we would bottom out somewhere around 6,000 before we would start to regenerate and come back. I will tell you that we not only stemmed that, and I say we because it's all of you, everybody that's on this call right now that shows a passion and an interest for masonry, the leadership in masonry, the past Grand Masters that have gone before me that saw that trend coming and started taking initiative with the strategic planning, with everything else that's gone on. We not only stemmed that, we've actually started to reverse that. So yes, we saw 4 lodges close this year. That was because they weren't bylaw compliant and they were no longer viable. If they aren't doing masonry, then they're not Mason. They're not Masonic. So if they're not opening and closing, and we now have other lodges that have that may not be quite there yet, but they actually have a action plan in place so they can become bylaw compliant. And where I'm going with this is we only lost 4 lodges this year. We went from 174 to 170. We were a little over 12,000 Masons. We're now just a little under 12,000 Masons. We're sitting at 11,500 and I don't know, 89 or something like that. I don't remember the exact number as of a couple days ago, but over 11,500. Well, that is a far cry from 8,000. Far cry. And so I'm ecstatic that all the Masons in Kansas Masonry that have been active and have been striving for membership through our membership committee or our branding or anything else, that we've been able to stem that flow. In fact, we're bringing in more Masons than ever. I mean, we're rolling with masonry, at least for the last several decades. And so that's a plus. It's a huge plus. The last 3 years, we've been positive in several areas. And I think that, again, just shows that that strategic plan is working. And so that was the first one, is to make sure that we continue to move forward with the strategic plan. I'll go back to your question. Sorry about that. I segued for a moment. But then I actually saw a fracture in Kansas Masonry that I have seen for the last several years, that I mentioned I was a very strong proponent of our appendant bodies. I believe that every Mason has an opportunity to find their journey in Masonry. They should. Whether that's holding tight to their Blue Lodge and doing everything they can to make their Blue Lodge and themselves better. Their house, their home, their job, their career, their community, and everything through their Blue Lodge. I'm great with that. But if a brother wants to be a Scottish Rite Mason or a York Rite Mason or an OES or a Shriner, it's not for me to tell them they shouldn't do that. It's not for me to tell them they should do that. That's up to them to find their journey or their path in Masonry, whatever appendant body they're interested in, if they are. And if they're not, that's fine too. But what I saw is a fracture to where some people were truly frustrated because a brother would want to be a Shriner or a brother would want to be, and he wasn't that active in his own lodge. And that's a problem, I believe. We should be supportive of our brothers in whatever body whatever their journey takes them, wherever it takes them. And so I wanted to figure out a way to help that. So I put together what I don't believe has been done, at least I couldn't find anything on it in history. I started researching all of the appendant bodies in Kansas Masonry, and there's a lot. There's a lot of bodies. There's a lot of appendant concordant, youth groups, motorcycle groups, and philanthropic or study groups or other research-based groups. And so as I'm starting to identify these, and some that have been recognized in Kansas long time ago, some that have not been recognized, but that we have Masons in Kansas that are members of, some in Kansas Masonry that they're active, they're moving, they're doing stuff, but they weren't ever officially recognized. So I built on Most Worshipful Stoops' list that he had put out, and I started identifying these different bodies and where they fit into Kansas Masonry. I learned it. I learned an incredible amount of information about the appendant concordant bodies and the youth organizations through doing this. But then I sponsored and hosted a Masonic Unity Day and brought 50 different organizations, bodies, concordant, appendant, together in one room in Salina in August. And, it was nothing more than just to put names with bodies and to hear just a little bit about each of them. And I think it paid huge dividends. We at least I've been told it has. So I think that was an initial start. I will tell you that I look forward to seeing where that goes from here, because I think it maybe enlightened some people, and it afforded some, if you want to call it support, legitimacy. I don't know where you'd go with that, but it validated, it showed some validity of those bodies. It validated them. And I'm a member of numerous of those bodies, not all of them, but of a large portion of them. And I think if that's what a brother needs to make him a better man, a better husband, a better leader in his community, is to be a member of one of those organizations, whether that's to take care of kids through the Shriners hospitals to help promote that, or if it's through the York Rite or the Scottish Rite or any of the other bodies. I'm not trying to steer anybody towards any one particular or even towards them. If they want to stick with their Blue Lodge, that's their journey. And we as other Masons should help them in any way possible that we can, instead of diminishing them for whatever reason. So that was another one. I wanted to continue to see leadership developed in Kansas Masons. We need to be, so part of servant leadership is finding the next person and the next person and the next person to replace you. And that's finding and developing those leaders. So through even the orientation that I hosted, through numerous other events, through everything we focused on, even that Masonic Unity Day that I just talked about, I had Most Worshipful Johnson come in and talk about leadership and how that transcends to all the appendant bodies, how our strategic plan transcends into all of those, because we might find another area deputy that didn't know they had that ability, or we didn't know about this district deputy because they were held real tight to their Blue Lodge and didn't know that those opportunities existed. And we can continue to develop those. So leadership development is a big piece too that I saw that we needed to continue and we needed to foster in Kansas Masonry. If for nothing else, just to help them be a better leader within their own lodge, within their own community, and their own home.
Put that amazingly. Now, as we go into the term of you serving as Grand Master of the Grand Lodge of Kansas, this is where most of our submitted questions focus around. So I'm going to work through those because I don't want to duplicate any of those. But I want to ask you one question that we're going to not answer until the very end.
Okay.
And that question is, what advice do you have for the next guy, Right Worshipful Doug Wilkinson, as he approaches that position? I think we can kind of give him like that half birthday at this point, just say he's almost most worshipful at this point.
So. He's almost there. And no, I will tell you openly, Doug and I have had an incredible relationship, still have an incredible relationship. Doug was one of my district deputies when I was the area deputy for Area 3 at the time. We've worked very close together. And so, yeah, I'll answer your question. We'll finish up with that.
Fantastic. So I'm going to start off with the questions in the Zoom chat here, and then we will work over to the Facebook side as well. And we've even got a couple on email. First one we got here is from Brother Roger Bide says, how important was it for you to travel to other jurisdictions for events like annual communications and or regional Grand Lodge conferences?
I think there's extreme value in having our Grand Lodge represented there. I was not there, but I did send other past Grand Masters. I sent the entire Council of Administration to Seattle as recent as last week. And I think it's extremely valuable. I did not go.
I think that's a fantastic point to put forward, the fact that you're still a guy, right? You've got obligations, you've got work, you've got family, and we can't make every single one of those. But that is the amazing factor of having that leadership team and that strategic plan, that you are able to put guys in that place and know that that message and those duties are going to get carried out, and that Kansas is going to get put forward on a positive step.
So I'll talk about that. That was probably one of and I knew it was there. I knew it was a piece of what I was going to have to experience, but the Grand Master's calendar is extremely fluid. It is extremely full. Not only am I juggling the Grand Lodge duties, but appendant concordant body duties, along with my wife, my kids, my grandkids, my career, my church. It's a fluid calendar. I will tell you that I made lots as I traveled the state, as I enjoyed fellowship and time with brothers, in lodge, appendant concordant events, at schools of instruction, at area meetings, the ones that I attended. Man, what a great experience it's been being a Grand Master. But no, I didn't travel outside of our state. I I did for a couple of concordant bodies events, but as Grand Master, no, I actually had to pull on past grands and the Council of Administration.
Yeah. And historically, that's kind of where our district deputies and all that came from. Is it's impossible for the grandmaster to be all these places and commit to life at the same time. But when you have those forms of leadership put in place, you can put those guys there, and the education and the information from such is still going to come back to you in a trustworthy way.
Absolutely, absolutely, it does. And the line of communication between the district deputies, the area deputies, the Council of Administration, the GLOs that I had represent me in several different areas, different events, pin presentations, etc., along with the past grands that I tasked with going to several different Grand Lodge, other state annual communications. The communication back to me and between us, it's incredible. It really is.
We got one here from Brother Curtis Utley. What do you feel was your most fulfilling experience this year as Grandmaster of Kansas?
I don't know that I could name just one, Curtis. Um, if I had to say anything, I would say it is the unity of the Council of Administration.
We've got, well, a comment here, but I think it's worth saying. Brother Justin Staley wrote in, "Wow, I'm not sure I could do 2 years in a row," referring to you taking 2 terms in the East there.
Yeah.
See, Brother Warren Hughes, most worshipful, out of all the many accomplishments you have had this year, what would you say was the most meaningful to you?
So that's kind of similar to Curtis's, but I can tell everybody wants to know something else other than just um, so I will tell you that most worshipful Johnson left the Council of Administration as tight as I had ever seen it. We seriously were a very, very tight knit group. We're even tighter now. And I really believe that. I absolutely cannot appreciate those guys or tell you how much I appreciate those guys. I absolutely love them. They're phenomenal. But if you're wanting something tangible, I would say it comes in. So one of the absolute coolest things that I did this year was go to an elderly gentleman's home. I did this several different times, but an elderly gentleman's home who was receiving, I believe it was his 75-year pin, if I remember correctly. It might have been his 80, but I think it was his 75-year pin. He wasn't uh, physically capable of sitting in lodge. So went to his home to present him with his pin, and just to being able to communicate with him and visit with him, learn about his Masonic history. Started out in the Blue Lodge, and then it went to an appendant body, and he hadn't been back in Blue Lodge a whole lot. But just to be able to embrace him and listen to him, that was priceless. If you were to ask me, and I can sit here and recall several of those that I did, and I think those were maybe some of the most meaningful for me personally. I could name numerous events that I went to that were an ideal Masonic experience. They blew it out of the water. I mean, phenomenal events that again were meaningful for me to be at. If you're asking accomplishment, something that I maybe fostered or my vision to move forward, yeah, I would say the Masonic Unity, sponsoring the York Rite bodies and bringing in 50 new York Rite members. The Scottish Rite, bringing in as recent as a couple of weekends ago and bringing in 25 new Scottish Rite members with the Grandmasters reunion. So I will tell you that maybe some of the most fun events were my actually returning just to a lodge, sitting in lodge, and not having a lot of Grandmaster stuff. Just sitting in lodge with a bunch of like-minded men, with a bunch of brothers. I addressed several different areas there, and I'm sorry I kind of bounced around, but I hope I addressed both Curtis's and Warren's and anybody else that has those kind of questions.
No, I love it because it really highlights that you've taken on roles of leadership, but at the end of the day, you just enjoy being a Mason.
Oh,
Yeah,
absolutely. Yeah,
fantastic.
absolutely.
We've got one here from Brother Curtis Utley. I know I saw the email. I don't know if it went out totally public yet. So if it didn't, well, we'll just say we may just send Masonic charges over Zoom for the first time, but I think it's fine here. Brother Curtis asks, explain your duties that you have accepted as the liaison for the appending bodies for the Grand Lodge of Kansas.
So in discussions, and obviously you can tell my passion for the appendant bodies, I feel so in communication with the Council of Administration and specifically with the Deputy Grandmaster, that position of the liaison to the appendant and concordant bodies of Kansas is going to be a brand new position in at the annual communication. I'll be installed in that position on Saturday as an appointee. And my primary goal or objective is to not only maintain, but to develop even further. We now have access on our website to those appendant and concordant bodies, thanks to a phenomenal website, seriously. State of the art. It really is. I'm ecstatic with the work that went into the new website. We have a calendar that the appendant and concordant bodies can utilize. I know that just a brief email went out to them about that. And yes, an email went out about my appointment, and I'm actually really looking forward to it. I think I can continue what I've started, And I hope whoever takes it after me, I hope to hold it for a couple of years anyway, and we'll see how that works out. But whoever takes it beyond me is able to make it even better. And it's my goal to find that servant leader that wants to continue that. So thanks for
100%.
the question, Curtis.
So some of you guys might be hearing that for the first time. So a little bit of history in the making here, and honestly, could not think of someone better to take on that new position. So looking forward to seeing what you do there, brother. We've got one from brother Billy Brantoni's. Most worshipful, thank you for your service and dedication to the craft this year. What do you feel the landscape of Kansas masonry will look like in 10 years?
Great question, Billy. Thank you for your service, Billy. So quick shout out for Billy. Billy actually is one of my district deputies in the Kansas City area, and he's done a great job taking on several tasks that I've asked him to do, and filled several roles that his area deputy had asked him to do. So thanks, Billy, for your service. Again, another true servant leader. So my belief in Kansas masonry, I think we're in great hands for years to come. I really believe that. I think you're going to start seeing. So Billy actually sat on the strategic plan committee when we developed the strategic plan. And I think you will see that plan continue through 2030, just as it has been set. And I think somewhere in 2029, you will start to see a new strategic plan being developed and start to come to the foreground. It may be similar, it may be something completely different. That'll be up to those that sit on that committee at that time. But what I will tell you is I really believe that Kansas masonry has the potential, if we continue the path that we're on, to not only correct that once perceived decline to 8 or 6,000 or whatever it was, and very few lodges, to maybe even seeing us at 15,000 or 17,000. I don't know. You know what? One thing is for certain. You heard Michael Johnson say it. Leadership in Kansas does change, but the foundation will remain. It's based on masonry, and as long as we continue to focus on Masonic values, Masonic virtues, the landmarks, and our strategic plan, and we have the foundation set in place for the growth in leadership, I can't help but believe that Kansas masonry is going to continue to thrive. And I think it's going to take everybody's part. It's going to take work. It's going to take effort. But just a spark can ignite a fire, and a fire can make that flow and continue to grow.
Very well put. We have one submitted by email from brother Joseph Jackson saying, in your time as Grand Master of Kansas, do you believe the charitable hand of the Grand Architect of the Universe is an absolute service to Kansas and greater mankind? From your personal, or from my personal view, I've seen chivalry amplified in many within the craft who accepted your challenge to journey through degrees of knighthood.
So I'm reading a couple different questions in there. So the first one I will address. Yes, I believe that the Grand Architect has, by the scripture that is on the great lights that I use for my faith, I'll say it that way. There is direction in there for us to take care of not only the widows and orphans, but to take care of the least of us among us. So yes, the least of us among us should be taken care of. That is through philanthropy. That is through our good works, through taking care of our communities, taking care of anybody we can. That's given back to our communities, to our churches, to our whatever that looks like for you as a Mason. But yeah, I believe that's absolutely essential. And I've I believe in it myself. I contribute myself in a wide array of ways. And yes, I believe all Masons should. So that was the first part of the questioning. Thank you for the shout out on the York Rite and the Scottish Rite. Yes, I believe that those that embraced that challenge, those that took that further enlightenment and journey in Masonry, I have no doubt that they grew. It was as good of Masonic experience as I've seen in Kansas. I had several tell me it was an ideal Masonic experience at all their events. And you know what? We had brothers that went to both. And so, yeah, I think that was a benefit for them. Maybe that was from my challenge. Maybe they were burning and yearning inside and just needed that little nudge. Whatever that took, we put on the best. It wasn't me, it was numerous other Masons that put the degree work together, that put all the behind the scenes work together, that put the effort in, from the paperwork to the lunches to the everything, the banquets, to make it work. And I mean, you guys know what it takes to put on an event. It's a lot. I just had an idea. I just did the challenge. But yeah, I think it paid dividends for Kansas Masonry.
We've got another one here on the Facebook side from Brother Jim Wood. Says, most worshipful, as you depart, what is that one thing that frustrates you that you have left undone this year?
Well, I'm not much for leaving undone. I would tell you that. I guess if I was to say that there was anything that frustrates me, it would be pending projects. So most worshipful Bloom will make a comment now and then that masonry moves at the pace of a glacier. And in some ways it does. I'm not much for glacial pace. I actually am pretty driven and believe that we can make a lot of really good things happen, and we did. But if I was to say anything left undone, I don't know that I have anything that's left undone. It'll be continued because of the way that the COA is set up, and there's nothing that has been started that wouldn't be finished by the ongoing efforts of the Council of Administration. So I don't think I can answer that one with a negative in any way.
That's a great way to put it. We have Brother Christopher Detweiler on Facebook. Says, most worshipful McClarty, thank you so much for letting me be a DDGM. Even though I started in the middle of the year, it was a good experience. Thank you again. So not a question, but high praise.
So Chris actually stepped up and filled a role. We have that occasionally when life happens. Roles have to be filled, and we have to do it fairly quickly. And Chris did. He stepped up and filled that role for me, and I appreciate you, Chris. You don't have to thank me. I appreciate you.
We have another Chris, Brother Chris Collins, on here saying, I'd love to hear how cool it was from his point of view when he was received at Albert Pike Lodge.
So that was the first place I was received, Chris. So it was totally cool. What a great experience. I will tell you that Worshipful Master Bloom, some of his, well, he did the Bible presentation, and he did that priceless. So the entire evening, again, it was just an ideal Masonic experience to be able to sit in the lodge and enjoy the evening. Yeah, absolutely loved it. So nice plug, Chris.
Brother Jim Woods threw on here, most worshipful, based on your experience, what advice would you give to the worshipful masters on how to generate interest for Freemasonry?
Be out there, be a representative yourself, be vocal, be a contact, be seen in your community, be seen in a positive light. Maybe that's through the branding of our new Discover Masonry program. Maybe it's through having the car with the new wrapped trailer there and the being able to show it off at a car event. However, that is being seen in your community. Maybe it's presenting a check at schools. Maybe it's presenting a check to scholarship winners. Um, whatever that is, but show value. You got to show value to your communities. You got to show value to the members who are attending. Then you got to show value for those that you want to get back in the lodge. That'd be my advice.
Hmm. Brother Jonathan Ali, and we've kind of addressed this, but I still want to ask it for you. Brother Jonathan Ali asked here, with the high success of your appendant body classes for the York Rite and Scottish Rite during your time in the Grand East, do you feel that it is imperative that the Grand Lodge continues to have a working relationship with all appendant bodies in order for Kansas Freemasonry to continue and grow?
Yes, that's why I accepted the position of Grand Liaison to the appendant concordant bodies. I believe I can help facilitate that and help not only the appendant bodies, but also help the Grand Lodge. And the support from both towards each other is what I think is imperative.
We have one here from Brother Stephen Johns. Do you feel that? Do you feel that meaning? I'm sorry. Do you feel that meaning? Do you feel that meaning the Grand Lodge moved from its location in Topeka to Emporia, that the dues each lodge pays to the Grand Lodge should be reduced? Do you feel, I'm sorry, should be reduced by the amount approved for the upkeep and repairs on the former building, so that in the current economy we can find ourselves in that brothers and lodges don't have any unnecessary expenses. So obviously speaking, since we have let go of our physical building in Topeka and moved, I think he's asking if the fees in our dues should be reduced, in your opinion.
No, actually, I believe they should be increased. I think our dues that we see in Kansas are trivial compared to most other states. And I think there's value in masonry. And anytime you have value in something, it costs. It costs for us to put on any program. It costs for us to put on new paint on the walls. It costs for us to travel. It costs for us to develop leaders. It costs for us to put on the annual communication. And all the above, yeah, I think our dues are probably not high enough.
It's a fascinating point, and we won't harp on it, but I can tell you for one, I did a presentation on the early history of my lodge, and the degree fees alone in 1868 were like $200 per degree. If you take that into an inflation calculator of what $200 in 1868 versus 2024 is, you guys would be highly surprised what Freemasonry cost in years past versus today.
And let me just talk about that just for a second.
Sure, go for it.
I think we all too often try to cheapen Freemasonry. And if you try to cheapen something, you get cheap back. And this is not cheap. This is probably one of the most valuable organizations for men in the world. We can grow men based on our values, our traditions, our ritual, and abilities to have premier events, to have premier leadership within our communities, to be recognized as the premier organization.
Yeah.
Don't cheapen it. Don't cheapen yourself. You cheapen it and nobody will want to belong.
Fascinating point. We have here Brother John Hag on Facebook says, most works from McClarty, thank you for your service to the craft. What are a couple of things you believe would make a positive impact for the craft in Kansas, which you're not yet doing, or which we are not yet doing? My apologies. Conversely, what couple of things would make the biggest positive impact if we were to stop doing them?
So things that we have not done that would improve the craft. So I would say to continue to develop events that impact our masons. And your area, your region, John, there's a bunch of them, but not all areas are the same in Kansas. So, and what I mean by that is because you're seeing an event in one area put on by one or two or three lodges, may not be happening 75 miles one direction or the other. So I think we as Masons need to recognize that we can continue to help each other, our lodges and our Masons grow if we continue to have value. I'll go back to value. If we continue to have ways that we can help each other, maybe that's through maybe it's through a barbecue, maybe it's through a fundraiser, maybe it's to be able to sponsor something in your own community, maybe it's through a ladies lodge night, maybe it's through, I don't know what that looks like for you, but I think we don't do enough to put ourselves out there in masonry for our own masons and for our communities. So I think if we stopped doing some of the things that we're doing right now, imagine if we took away the Leadership Academy. Imagine if we took away the Masonic Unity Day. Imagine if we took away, maybe it's one or two reunions a year for whether it's Scottish Rite, York Rite. Maybe you took away a shrine circus or two or three or five. If we quit putting ourselves out there and we quit seeing the OES or whatever that is, or we quit seeing Masons doing dedications and we go away. We go away. I hope I answered your question, John.
Brother John has two more questions here. I'm going to loop them into one because I feel like they kind of go together. He says, most worshipful, what are some things that each lodge could do to help future grandmasters be more successful? And also, what are a few helpful resources that most lodges don't consider or may not even know about?
I'll address the first one first, resources. So you've got an incredible resource through our website. Our website's extremely valuable now, and I think it continues to grow. Our lodge page, another resource that I think it's far underutilized. Again, a huge resource. Another resource, you're looking at it right now, Kansas Lodge of Research. Another resource, our grand lectures, district lectures, and RITCOM, extremely valuable tools that are available for you in the lodges. Another resource I would say is, I mean, I could go on and on. I'll stop there. We've got resources are coming out our ears if people look for them, and I think you're going to see a resource tool show up in the very near future that maybe will promote some of those. I think one of the most valuable, and I didn't mention it. I would be totally regretful if I didn't. Is the Kansas Masonic Foundation. The programs through the foundation are an incredible resource for our brothers themselves, but also through for our communities. For if your lodge isn't taking advantage of the resources available, they're truly falling short. Brother Shively and Brother Robert Nelson, the president, executive director and president, correspondingly. But man, they have done an incredible job this year. Resources are there. The raffle tickets, the fundraising ability for your lodges, whether it's the guns or the car, the opportunities there are literally endless. It's whatever your brothers want to put into that. So that was the first part. I'm going to have to ask you to repeat that second part. It was about the lodges and assisting the Grandmaster. I'm sorry.
That was the first part, was basically saying what can lodges do better to help grandmasters be even more successful.
Use those resources. That'd be the first thing I'd tell you. Use those resources and remain viable. That's probably the most valuable thing I could tell you that would help the grandmaster. Next, I would tell you to be supportive. Come to events within your own area that the grandmaster's at. Come to there's numerous events that I went to this year that 15, 18, 20, maybe 25 brothers were at. Um, I went to one that had 6. So, and it was in a fairly populated area. Um, that's another way to support the Grand Master, is if he's coming into your area, go, go. He'd love to see you. He'd love to talk to you. Other ways that you can support the Grand Master. Come to annual communication. I hope to see you there.
Good shameless plug. Love it. Let's see here. Brother Michael Colberry, sorry, muted myself, says, most worshipful, through your time as Grandmaster, what would be a lesson that you have learned along the way?
There's a long but distinguished list. Balance. Balance is probably the most valuable. Balance for my family, balance for my career, balance for my church, balance for masonry, time. There's only so many seconds in a day. There's only so many days in a year. Priorities are essential. I considered this a priority, being able to talk with you all tonight. That's why I'm here. Could I have found something else to do tonight? About 138 other things. I think priorities are essential, and balance your time and life.
I kind of wish Masonry would teach something about that, don't you think?
You'd almost think there's something about that somewhere.
We have one here from Brother Larry Bell. Says, most worshipful McClarty, because of your help, I was able to rejoin my brothers here and earn the title of past master of Kansas Masonic Lodges are stronger and better because of your work. Sorry, I didn't read that all the way through. Not a question, but another high praise.
Thanks, Larry. I'm glad to call you brother, and I hope you're doing well. I really do.
And it looks like we just have 2 more over on the Zoom side here. If you're okay with just a couple more questions, I know we're
Yep.
2
Yep,
minutes
let's do
past
it. I
schedule.
know we're over, but let's do it.
We have one from Brother Stephen Cannon. Most worshipful, thank you for your incredible dedication and hard work and service. What do you feel we can do to help grow the brotherhood and ensure the longevity of Masonry in Kansas?
So, Brother Steve, thank you for your service, and you know what I'm talking about. I appreciate you. I really do. I want you to know that I still have my patch, and I display it proudly every single day. So now, with that being said, I will tell you that I think you can benefit masonry by showing value in masonry, by showing others how it's benefited you, by talking about masonry, and by being an active member. And as long as you're doing that, you and I are going to see each other again.
Very well. Brother Billy Brantoni says, can you make all the brothers on Kansas searchable in OLP? Currently, if I wanted to reach out to Brother Lincoln Wilson, OLP will not allow me to. Only brothers in my area.
So, Billy, this is what I would tell you. I don't have a clue, but I surround myself with really, really good people that can take care of that kind of stuff. So if you would send an email to bloom@kansasmason.org, maybe somebody can answer that question. That's one I can't answer. Alex, can you?
Well, I will say I know the developer personally, and he is always looking to grow and improve. So that is something that we can definitely bring up. It would probably be something really beneficial to reach directly out to Bloom at kansasmason.org, but probably after the annual communication
Yep.
because he's got a lot of spare time on his hands right now. We want to let him get caught up on his shows. So just give him a couple weeks here. But I think all those things are possible. Just got to bring them up. So great job bringing that up, and we'll see if we can improve that. And then we got one last one here from Brother Jim Marple says, Most worshipful brother, thank you for your service. I'm a Kansas Mason residing in Texas. This year, the Grand Lodge of Texas had its squabbles. Yeah. Do you
Yeah.
know of any jurisdiction that Kansas is trying to improve relations with?
Um, I brother, I tell you that right now we have really good relations. The feedback that I got from the brothers who attended the Conference of Grand Masters and the Midwest Conference in Seattle last week, uh, our relationships are tight with the other states, and far beyond. Uh, Brother Crane has a good working relationship. Stoops has a good relationship outside of our country, and Brother Craddock, extremely great relationship outside of our country, and within the United States. And so Kansas is well represented, and Kansas plays really well with. There aren't any that I can think of that we don't play well with. So. Highly respected, and we highly respect the other sovereign bodies. So I hope I answered your question.
Most worshipful, with your blessing here, I might tie in on that and see what you think. So at the Conference of Grandmasters up in Seattle, I had the pleasure to join in there, and the last night I had the opportunity to sit down and have a wonderful discussion with the past Grandmaster, Brad Billings of Texas, who was quite involved in a lot of the squabbles that we're referencing here. And he said one thing that really stuck out to me. He said that Kansas has a great reputation, but the most impressive thing that he's seen about Kansas is just how well we get along and how well we work together. I want to see what you think about that and how it ties in with maybe our relationships.
So again, I would answer it by saying it's the basis for Kansas Masonry. It's the way we utilize the Council of Administration, the way we utilize our leadership, and um, there's no my year. It's an ongoing seamless flow. And it's because of the foundation of Kansas Masonry and the way that we are set up with the Council of Administration and the appointment to the line, and then the fostered development of the upcoming Grand Master.
Most worshipful, I gave you a question as we started your section on Grandmaster here, and we're going to readdress it. So as you come near our annual communication and you get ready to exit the East, the Grand East, as you will, what advice would you give to the next in line, Right Worshipful Doug Wilkinson?
So it'd be the same advice that I would give any Mason online right now. Serve with the servant's heart, and doing so, remain focused on what's in the best interest of Kansas Masonry. If you do that, Kansas Masonry will remain strong from start to finish. Same for him, same for all of you. I really appreciate everybody's questions. I appreciate everybody's time. Thank you for your interest. Thank you for your interest in not only the position, but in me. I appreciate each and every one of you. Alex, thanks for the invite.
Thank you, most worshipful, and seriously, thank you for all that you've done throughout your entire Masonic career leading up to this point. You've been a tremendous service to the craft, to Masonry as a whole. Appreciate you so much for. I mean, I know this is not a relaxing time of year, to say the least, for someone in your position, but to take the time aside to help us record history in this unique way means a great deal. And last but not least, I want to ask that you please extend our thanks to your wife and your family for allowing us to steal you away for a little bit to have this conversation with you. And with that, most worshipful, I want to allow you any final comments.
Brothers, I hope to see you all at the annual communication. I hope you gained a little bit of insight into the Grand Lodge of Kansas and even into me tonight. I thank you for your interest. With that being said, it's my prayer that each of you grow in Masonry and that you grow in your own homes. You become the best men, the best leaders, the best person you can. You'll do that through Masonry. Stay the course. Love y'all. Have a great night.
Thank you. Thank you, brothers. Have a great night.